If you're chasing your next promotion right now, you might actually be slowing down your career growth. Sounds strange, right? Most people don't get stuck in their race to get promoted because they're not working hard enough. They get stuck because they're building the wrong capabilities. Don't ask, how can I get promoted? Instead, ask, am I preparing myself to lead at the next level? Because these two are very different paths. During my interview with Wilfrid Foo, the then CEO of Cycle and Carriage Southeast Asia, I asked him about his journey into middle management because for many of us who are career-minded and work in corporate, it's not enough to just be a team leader. You got to go to the next level, to be a head of department at the very least. So I'm asking him about what it takes to lead in middle management. This video is the 6th segment in our interview, and you can catch the rest in my Leading the Middle playlist. He continues to mention his two-belt analogy, so you might want to get some context by watching his first segment of our interview here. When you look at Wilfrid's background, it's a background of a university business graduate turned corporate high flyer. He performed well and knows how to read finance as a business language, and that allowed him to perform well. And like many of us, when you perform well, you expect a promotion, right? But that's not what happened. Instead, his boss told him that he was too siloed, that he was only good in one aspect of the broader work that someone at the GM level would cover. And so, instead of promoting him, they moved him to sales in Malaysia. Think about that for a moment. You might be in a job you actually enjoy. You're doing well, you're comfortable, and you're asked to move to a foreign country, into a role you don't understand. Most of us would hesitate. Wilfrid did, and he didn't jump in blindly, but asked for some time to complete his MBA. Then he went, and after 18 months where he did well, he was moved again to Switzerland. And after that, off to China, where he worked with a billionaire founder. Throughout the journey, the message he kept hearing was, still not ready. Now, imagine that. You're performing, meeting your targets, moving from one place to another, learning increasingly complex ways of business. And you're told, not yet. That's frustrating to any high performer. So the question is, what's going on here? Why would a high performer be repeatedly told, not yet? And more importantly, what can you and I learn from this? Especially if you're a team leader trying to get into middle management or a head of department wanting to go into general management. So, eventually you proved yourself, and once again, your bosses pretty much tapped you and said, hey, look, Wilfrid, I think it's time for you to move up again. Yeah. So, in moving up to becoming a leader of leaders where your team members are leading their own teams, before you stepped into such a role, what was your perception of being in middle management?
Okay, my career was not always take the next step up. It was many sideways movements, change in geographies, change in disciplines. Mind you, I'm educated in Australia with a business degree that majored in marketing and management. So naturally, I started out in marketing.
Which university?
Monash in Australia.
Fellow alumni.
And when I started out in marketing, and I solved the problem of the diminishing performance of one category, I was asked, what would you like to do? And I said, I want to be in general management, you know. And my boss says, that's great, good ambition, but you're very siloed in one field, so you have to do sales now, okay? So we're going to send you to Malaysia to do sales.
Okay.
And for me, it's like, what, sales? I don't know anything about sales, right? So I said, before you send me, I also have to educate myself. I want to do my MBA as well. So let me complete my MBA and then I'll go on this stint. It bought me a little bit of time to reflect on whether I should leave the shores of very comfortable Singapore to go to perhaps a foreign land like Malaysia, right? In a different role and capacity.
You're an individual contributor. Think of any technical field: human resources, marketing, IT, sales, finance, etc. You're in a niche within a much broader field. You perform well, deliver on targets, and after a couple of years, you're promoted. Now, you're in charge of that niche as a supervisor or team leader with a small team. Then you set your eyes on the next promotion. Most people think, if I perform well in my niche, I'll be promoted again. But here's the thing, that approach where you become good in your niche works when you're going from individual contributor to a team leader or supervisor. You just go up. But it breaks when you want to go from team leader to head of department. Think about it this way. As a team leader or supervisor, you are responsible for one niche in your technical field. For example, I used to work in an organization where in the finance department alone had an accounts team along with tax, treasury, risk management, and reporting and analysis. The department head had 5 team leaders under him, each with their own niches. I learned that when the department head got his role, he already had hands-on experience in 3 of those niches and was very familiar with the last 2. Once you desire to go into middle or general management, knowing your one niche is not enough. You have to scale your experience so you are seen as the best person to work with everyone across several niches in your technical field. So, what Wilfrid was sharing is that promotion comes when you're ready. And to show readiness means to take those lateral moves to different niches in different countries to gain experiences. He wanted to be a general manager. And so that means knowing sales, marketing, finance, regional and global stakeholder management, thinking like a business stakeholder rather than just a people manager, etc. Leadership at a higher level requires breadth, not just depth, that you gain from experience in your technical area. And so you have to take ownership and engineer your career progression within your organization if there's room for that. You can't leave it to chance. If this is already shifting how you think about leadership, do like the video. It helps more leaders discover these crucial insights. That's why, to start the process of broadening his experiences, Wilfrid went to first complete his MBA. But even when you prepare, you still have to step into something uncomfortable. And being in uncomfortable situations alone doesn't make you a better leader.
So I finished my MBA and I said to my boss, yeah, I'll embark on this journey. Sales, you say? Okay, let's go do it. So I went to Malaysia, did 18 months of sales, handling regional high traffic outlets, supermarkets, hypermarkets, petrol kiosks, etc. And I learned the tools of the trade. I learned how these retailers function and thought and think about the business today and tomorrow. And that were new tools that I put on my tool belt, right?
Technical experience alone is not enough. I've met many leaders, especially team leaders with 10, 15 years of technical experience, even more, who still struggle with team management, stakeholder management, team leadership, difficult conversations, driving performance, etc. Why? Because they may have plenty of work experiences and even years of leading and managing people in a mostly unchanged environment, meaning in the same position for many years. However, there's little effort to extract learning from those same experiences to improve their leadership mindset. Wilfrid framed it very simply. His 18 months in Malaysia gave him hands-on experience into sales, given that he came from a marketing background. Every role he took gave him new tools, be it customer thinking, strategic exposure, or a founder's mindset. He used all these to improve his leadership tool belt and his understanding of business at increasingly higher levels. He leaned into his discomfort and grew in his weak areas by stepping into roles where he had zero experiences. So, he was developing his technical knowledge as well as his leadership skills in different environments. But discomfort alone isn't enough, and your leadership tool belt don't build themselves. Who's going to give you the right kind of exposure?
So after 18 months, my boss in Malaysia then said to me, with different boss now, said to me, you want to be a GM still? Yeah. I says, okay, now so we're going to send you to Switzerland, okay? So you got to go to Switzerland and you've got to learn a couple of things. You got to learn how regional businesses function, how global technologies function. So you're going to have two roles there, okay? You're going to be a global lead of one particular food technology, and then you're going to have a regional lead in terms of helping the regional markets to win, okay? So thereof, I'm off again, right? And in these roles, I was the lowest denominator in the strategic business unit in Switzerland. However, I had to work remotely with country teams in that regional capacity, and engineers, scientists, etc. in that global technology, food technology platform. So I learned new skills there. So what I'm trying to tell you is that in the quest for progression and leading bigger teams, you also have to constantly arm yourselves with knowledge and experience. And some of this knowledge and experience cannot be garnered from school. You have to then take a brave move to understand that lateral movements, cross-cultural, cross-geographical exposure, cross-discipline exposure could help you add a lot more tools in a very accelerated form because you're doing it every single day. And that was what I got from Switzerland.
As the number of people you lead gets bigger, the perspective you have on leadership has to broaden and deepen. Many leaders, managers, supervisors can become very good in a particular work environment. But as I mentioned earlier, they stay in that same environment for a long time, and so their leadership doesn't grow because it's not tested in different environments and situations. They may be good at leading one or two people, but when the number of people increase, they start to struggle. Should the number grow further, they're at their limit. Leading increasing number of people all in one location or spread out over multiple locations require different ways of leading, managing, and supervising. I once had a new department head who went from a team of 10 to a department of 30. And he was wondering how to lead so many people alongside his 3 team leaders. As the number of people you lead grows, so does the diversity and complexity. If you have 8 team members and you still lead them like you have just 2, then you will struggle for sure. Now the question is, if you want to gain experience in leading more people, where do you get that? For Wilfrid, because Singapore is a small country and we are an island, he had to head overseas. Now, even if you live in a big country, just moving to another city can give you exposure to different cultures, stakeholders, and ways of thinking. The experience needed to lead bigger teams is something you don't get from the classroom. And if you're serious about leadership development and you want practical breakdowns like this on leadership mindset, team management, and leading in middle management, then I invite you to subscribe to the channel. It helps us get this video out to more leaders. Leadership is tested in real life, dealing with real situations and learning from them. That's what builds real leadership capabilities. But even with all this exposure, why was he still told he's not ready?
And then they tell me, oh, look, still not good enough for a GM role, no? I'll promote you once because you did relatively well, but now you're going to move laterally to China. You got to take a look at a joint venture that we worked on there, and you're going to work on corporate strategy there. So off I went, and there I encountered a billionaire founder of a confectionery business that Nestle bought 60% off as an organization, and I was working in an environment, again, different cultural nuances, different thinking of a founder, billionaire founder situation, how he thought about margins, how he thought of new product. So again, adding new belts. And finally, I was told, okay, you want a GM role still? Okay, you're going to be the business executive officer in Malaysia for this category. Now off you go. So I moved again, you know. So I'm saying, I think at the end of this story, it's all about the willingness to embrace change and saying, and mobility is a big part of it. And not every destination is one that you might think of wanting to work in, but it brings so much experience and adds so many tools to the tool belt.
There was once a young team leader who approached me after a training program. He was 26 years old at the time and wanted to know what it takes to become a CEO in 10 years by age 36. I thought briefly for a while and told him that it would require a lot of sacrifice. He had to gain a lot of life experiences along the way and mature as a person. He responded by telling me that there has to be another way and ended the conversation. When you're ambitious, you expect fast progression. And if you're naive, you think that progression is just up, up, up. And when progression doesn't show up according to plan, frustration builds. This causes some to just take whatever role they think will give them the progression. That's reacting, and you can't scale your leadership that way. Wilfrid kept moving, kept learning, even when the title didn't come. He made deliberate moves, cross-functionally, cross-culturally, in order to build his capabilities. Because if you step into a leadership role where you're not solidly ready for, you might end up trying to impress others because you lack that inner confidence. And so it's not about speed of progression that we are talking here. The real question is, are you strategically building yourself up to essentially maximize success at the next level when it does come? Wilfrid's journey, the way he's explained it, sounds simple, but it's not easy to execute. If he had asked, how do I get promoted? Then any promotion in his marketing field will do. Instead, when he asked, what do I have to do to be a general manager? The answer is not a promotion, but a journey that brought him to places he wouldn't have imagined and experiences he didn't think was needed. He kept performing, but didn't feel the progression. Sometimes he seems like he's stuck at a certain level. Then he has to learn to lead bigger teams across regions and finally recognize that the leadership journey is long and arduous. So you see how these questions lead to different paths? Now, for Wilfrid, to be fair, he was a graduate talent in his organization, and so he went through the graduate career path. Conversations about career exposure, mobility to overseas assignments, faster progression, and stretch opportunities are to be expected for talents of his caliber. So, what about us normal folks? Career progression still has to be strategic and engineered, where you own your development and lean into discomfort as you learn other niches. When you are an individual contributor, once you have learned your niche, a promotion to leading your own team is usually a straight-up affair, provided you know how to lead. From team leader to head of department or from head of department to general management, however, requires you to learn several niches and do them well before you can be considered for the next promotion. That journey will take years and is an arduous process where you are repeatedly tested both in your leadership and management skills. I noticed that the leadership rules keep changing as one goes from individual contributor to team leader to head of department. That's why I have an entire program called Leading the Middle for middle managers and those interested in getting into middle management. And this program covers the essential skills and mindsets needed to effectively lead with breadth and depth at that level. It's currently an in-person program and you can learn more about it on my website, simpleleadership.co. Most leaders get stuck with their promotion, not because they lack effort, but because they lack clarity. And when you don't have clarity, you start guessing by taking roles that don't build you and avoid roles that stretch you. I've put together a weekly newsletter where I break down one leadership concept each time in a very simple and practical way, so you don't have to guess your way through your leadership journey. The link to sign up is in the description below. Before you go, my question for you is, what kind of resistance have you faced in your next promotion? Is it your organization, your boss, or your own readiness? Share it in the comments. By the way, Wilfrid mentioned quite a bit about his leadership tool belt. Learn more about that concept here.